Wassalam alaikum, my brothers and sisters. I'm glad that you are here today for this discussion on citizenship. This is basically my seminar. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to connect through the seminar, but I'm going to do the same presentation live through what I'm on right now. I'm way away right now. I'm down in the Delta, so I hope that our connectivity does good and that we can go through this presentation. First of all, let me just say, this is the Black News Network, the real voice of Black USA, broadcasting live from this network. I'd like you to please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like us on Facebook. We thank you for your participation, and we really couldn't do it without you. And it's all free. It is free. That's all it is. Just do it. All right. There's always been a question about the 14th Amendment being as correct as it's supposed to be, or is giving us citizenship in the United States of America. But unfortunately, there's a couple of things about this 14th Amendment that don't seem to be correct. And those things are particularly the things we will discuss today. And I don't take this lightly, because we are citizens of this country. But it does take a lot more than just proclaiming that we're citizens. And how can I explain that? We walked, let's start back at the Civil War, when they allegedly say our history started, but it started way before that. We walked out of the Civil War, and we were allegedly free based on the Emancipation Proclamation. However, as soon as we walked out of the out of the Civil War, by the individuals that were in power and were able to make these proclamations. And this proclamation did not give us citizenship. What it does, it gave us the avenue for citizenship, and we have to take that avenue, and that's what we have not done. So based on what I'm going to show you and talk to you in the middle of all of it, we'll find out why I think we don't have citizenship in the United States of America. First of all, we'll discuss, how did we get to this situation we're in right now? We'll also discuss citizenship, and then we'll discuss true citizenship, because they're different. There's a difference. We'll talk about authenticating a birth certificate. We're going to talk about what's in our name, the 1751 Liberty Bell, the 1776 Declaration of Independence, the 1778, the United States of America becoming a country, the Gettysburg Address, and finally in 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation. Things didn't stop right there, but we want to just let you know that these are things that are very, very significant and important to your stay in this country. So before we go into those particular things, I'd like to do definitions because many of us don't know the difference between a residence and a domicile. A resident is considered in the Black's Law Dictionary a dwelling in a place other than your home. Now, a domicile refers to your true principal and permanent home. So when the police officer or anybody tell you that what's your residence, then they asking you, where do you temporarily reside? You don't temporarily reside. You have a domicile because you live there. The other word is being sovereign. Now, each state is sovereign in its own right. However, it is mandated that it's not controlled, but that it follows the federal laws that are passed down to these states. Okay. Domicile sovereign means you're independent. You can do whatever you want to do inside the borders of your country. Each person is a sovereign person, but you're governed by a higher power. And whether it be God, whether it be the federal government, that's what it is. Now, the next one is citizenship, a citizen. And basically, when we say we're a citizen here, it went to the next one. See if I can go back. Citizen, someone who by either birth or naturalization is a member of a political community. We're technically a political community. Emancipation. Emancipation. The act by which one who is under another's power and control is freed. So we were emancipated by the Emancipation Proclamation. And I wanted to break down those two words so we had a clear understanding what they mean. Proclamation, a formal public announcement made by the government. So Abraham Lincoln formally made this act to release us from slavery and made it law. And the law is the regime that orders human activity, which is the federal government. They ordered, at that time, they were the supreme power of the federal government. And the last thing, we just talked law. Let's talk statutory law. It derives from statuses rather than from constitution or a judicial decision. So statutory law is based on a law that's created after something dirty has happened, like they did that Chinese law or act or whatever you want to call it that made Chinese people safe from walking in the street at night because they were getting beat up. This guy right here, Melvin Herskovitz, Melville Herskovitz, he's the man who solidified our culture right here in the US of A. If it wasn't for this guy, it would have been very difficult, or it took a lot longer time for us to make our presence known here in America, even though it only started after the Civil War. Now, other people do things like right now we're outside, so you're going to hear some lawnmower interference. Don't worry about it. It's going to go away eventually. He basically set us in motion to be better, to be part of the United States of America. And how did Melville Herskovitz do this? He acknowledged Black culture in America as African. And he was an instructor at a university, and he made this his study. He studied Black culture for 40 years, and he acknowledged it in some of his writings. And by him doing that, we established ourselves as African Americans in this country. He also had in his discovery, his writings, that we maintain our African heritage, behavior, and our institutions, our family, our language, and our art. by being in America. We maintain all these things that are ours, and that because we are part of this country now, those things are part of us. We're not going to let those things go. He also declared an unbroken link to African Christianity, propelling the westernization of slaves. In other words, he's saying the Christianity in this country westernized us as slaves. All right, University Program of African Studies in 1948. That's where you can find this information. And he was a professor at Northwestern University, anthropology department. That's a very good understanding of who you are, how you stand in this country, and why you are looked at a certain way, and why your culture is so despised, because it's in writing and a white man did it, and it made you who you are. This is another guy that's very significant in your growth in America, because Walter Plecker started calling us colored people. And I think it was 1924, he wrote the Racial Integrity Act of 1924. And this act described the one drop rule. In other words, one drop of Negro blood, then you are a Negro. I don't care if you look extremely white. You're a Negro because you got one drop of our blood. Any birth certificate identifying a person as Indian, Negro, mulatto, and so many other names called for two racial categories. What was happening is white people were, when babies were born, they were putting on the birth certificate that this child was an Indian. So they could escape the taxes, the regulations, because Indian nation is sovereign in its own right. In other words, the Indian nation is a nation within a nation. Plecker made sure that we were either white, and if we were not white, we were colored. Those are the only two races that they would accept in 1924. And if you call yourself anything other than white or colored, they would lock you up for a penalty of up to 5 years just for you not knowing you should call yourself colored. In other words, this is a further indoctrination of them separating you from your heritage and your ancestry by making you a colored person. And colored can be 1,000,001 different colors, but you colored so you're not part of the white race. That's what he wanted to do, is establish the white people by themselves. And he did it. He did a good job at it too, because we were colored. Now, for this one, I'm basically, it's a little pushed together because I'm on this system. Man can't make you, or man can't name you. He can't give you a name. And he tried to give us all names, and none of those names apply to who we really are. God and Allah are the only people, are the only ones who can give us a name. And he already gave us a name. God named the tribes, each tribe a nation. And we are part of the Hebrew nation. We are Hebrew. We are descendants of the Moabites and the Canaanites during the years of 70 AD to 1491. In 1492, we became Indios. That's when Columbus crossed the Appalachian Mountains, and he saw millions of people. And those million people, he thought he was in India, but he was not. He was in continental United States. He had just crossed those mountains, and he ran into all those people. And also, Abraham Lincoln said that the United States had to expand westward, but we didn't want to pay toll to the dark people, the 10 million dark people that lived on that land. So they took it and enslaved us. That's how it happened. There were over 10 million black people here when this happened, when Abraham Lincoln was president and assassinated. They called us slaves. And even in the writings today, like the 14th Amendment, they call us slaves. How are you going to say we gave slaves citizenship? We were not slaves. So how are you going to say you gave slaves citizenship? That's not us. So you gave it to slaves, but you didn't give it to us because slaves are not us. You cannot give us that name as slaves. And slaves were used from 1600 to 1831. We were black Indios, and Indios is the original word for Indian. From 1832 to 1899, we then became Negroes from the 1900 to 1924. And in 1924, we became colored. And then we became blacks. And then we became African Americans. And to this day, we have 3 particular names that we like to use that describe us. And neither one of these names were given to us by God or Allah. So we made these names for us. White man gave us these names, and we helped him by perpetuating these names and making ourselves a nobody by using these names of something that does not exist. You know, this is sad, but we're not black, we're not African American, and we're definitely not colored, and we're damn sure not niggas. So I'm telling you this so you can remember that you need to seek what your culture is and become who you really are. Because if you are, let me see if I'm going into this. I'll go into the next slide, I believe. Which one? Abraham Lincoln called us the slave. America does not want you to know that Lincoln said there were 10 million dark people living westward of the Appalachian Mountains. We are native to this continent. We moved with the land when the tectonic plates split. And Dan tried to tell you that there is only life for 39 billion years ago, but life is a lot further back than 39 billion, million, whatever, I don't know the term. Life began way before that, and they wanted to put that number on it so they can ensure. That's just another way to ensure that you don't realize that you had history before the white man said man was existing. Something had to exist before then, and what existed was my ancestors that they took and made slaves out of. We are natives to this continent, like I said before. And on November 7th, 1693, now remember the first slaves hit America in 1619. On November 7th, 1693, Charles II, he issued a royal proclamation giving liberty and land to the black Seminoles of the land. Now, black Seminoles were the blacks who migrated from the north to Mexico, because Charles II was in Mexico. And it wasn't Mexico then, but during that time in the 1600s, it was Mexico. So they considered us the black Seminole. So if you are not a Seminole, which dictates a nationality, then what are you? Black and African American doesn't give you a nationality. Slave doesn't give you a nationality. You know, unfortunately, our names are names given to us by our slave masters. These names are Smith, Tucker, Paul, whatever the names are. They are slave names, but they are our names now. We cannot turn away from our name. My name has been suffixed Warren Smith Bay. We can only occupy these two names in America, and that is Bay or L. If you're not a Bay, if you're not an L, then you don't have a nationality. Hear it again. If you're not a Bay, if you're not an L, you don't have a nationality unless you can join the Chinese. You know, Bay and L is our family. That's our family name. Added to the last name connects us to our ancestry, the ancient Moabites. Now listen to this. The Sopranos is Italian. You know this in a name. Garcia is Mexican. Oliver is Latin. And Lee is Chinese. All right, so what's black? Shaquita, we're not going to go there because those names are not part of a nation. These are nations. Italy is a nation. Mexico is a nation. When I say Latin, Spanish, Belize, and the Southern Hemisphere, South America, they are South Americans. Li, Chinese from China. You know, those, if you can go on down the list, if you talk about a German, he's from Germany. He has a nation. But when it comes to us, talk about us, where do we start? Where do we begin? It's a way back from all of this. They took it from us, and now it's time for us to take it back. And we can't take it back unless we participate in getting it back. You know, the fight is not over. You're going to keep getting discriminated against. You're going to keep getting shot in the middle of the street because you will not claim your birthright in your divine creed. There's a way back, and I'm fixing to tell you how it is. You got to reclaim what's rightfully yours, and that's your birthright. Your birthright comes from somewhere. You didn't just pop up out the ground after the Civil War, but that's what they want you to believe. Your birthright and divine creed. Divine creed is your ancestral connection and faith. If you want to really know why I believe so dearly in what I'm telling you right now, I know what I'm telling you. I don't believe it because believing is in something you don't know. I know what I'm telling you. Read Leviticus 25:10. See, they didn't take that out of the Bible, out of the King James Version of the Bible, but they took all the other shit that told you that you were royal. You were from a royal tribe or a royal country, and you accepted it as is. That's like buying a damn car on a lot and taking it as is. Don't take the shit that they feeding you because it is not true. You keep your slave name like I've done and like anybody else, because you're going to have to show your connectivity from now all the way back to where they put you on the boat in Africa, your ancestors on the boat in Africa. You might well say put you on the boat because you had to be a nut, a sperm somewhere in that travel. Know you are part of this government. They cannot get rid of you. And they really would like to shut you off and move you out, even though you built this country. You did more for this country than any single tribe or group of people did. Everybody else did very specific things. Like the Chinese, they are known for building the Chinese and Japanese are known for building the railroads. We are known for building the railroads too. But we built the railroads, the train car, the connection, the map that they lay on. We did all of this, not just one particular thing. We are part of every single success story in this country. And if you don't know by now, then you're not paying attention to who you really are. You gotta focus on your heritage. You came from a beautiful legacy. Learn it. Your history did not start at the end of the Civil War, and that is what I'm stressing at you today. These are adjectives. You cannot be a Negro, colored, slave, black, African American, or nigger. They are slaves, given name, by slavery in 1779. These names lasted until 1865, which is a name that you should not be using right now. If you don't know who you are, don't proclaim who you are. If you see that box on, they can't put you in a box. They're trying to prescribe who you are. If you're filling out an application, they're going to say you what? African American. Or they're going to say you. The Emancipation never said you were citizen of the United States. They said you were free. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforth shall be free. Free, but not citizens. They never gave you your citizenship. But the U.S. promised to pay for liberated slaves. They were supposed to pay us. And if you want to know where it's at, go to the Emancipation Proclamation, Section 10, and you'll see where they said that they would pay us to relocate. They would give us the money, and none of that took place. That is Abraham Lincoln's executive will request or requirements. The 13th Amendment only ended chattel property in the South. And chattel property is being a group of cows that exist. That's it. Chattel slavery. Now, the worst thing about what I just said on these 2 points, we cannot, I don't know how they decided that this is our nationality, slave. Slave is not our nationality. But as you get to the 14th Amendment, you're going to see where they said slaves have citizenship, which is not us. Let's go to it. We're going to get to it in just a second. All right. 14th Amendment, Section 4, loss of any emancipated slaves. This part talks about the money that they take that they were supposed to give to the slave owners for liberating slaves. They said they were going to give up to $100 per liberated slave to the plantation owners or the slave owners. So when all of this was said and done, emancipation was enacted, the slaves were released from the plantation, the United States said, I ain't paying y'all shit. You're not going to get that money. This is where the problems start. In 1788, enslaved people were 3/5 of a person rather than a full citizen, and any claims against the government were ignored because you were black or because you were African American. You know, one of the two. Now, Dred Scott argued in 1856, and it was decided in 1857 by the Supreme Court. It ruled that anyone of African descent, now this is the Supreme Court now, look at what they are doing with the Constitution right now. And they did this with the Constitution back then. Any of African, what is it? The Supreme Court ruled that American African descendants, whether free or slave, were not American citizens and could not be sued in federal court. The court also ruled that Congress lacked the power to ban slavery in the U.S. territory. This is a Supreme Court ruling that has not been overturned. Now, there's no way we're going to overturn that right now because they're not going to even hear the shit when you tell them. Dred Scott was this is a little more about that case. The U.S. Supreme Court on March 6, 1857 ruled 7-2 that a slave who resided in a free state where slavery was prohibited, the African American were and could never be citizens of the United States of America. That is where we stand, my brothers and my sisters. In 1883, the Supreme Court struck down the Civil Rights Act of 1875. Before we got the Civil Rights Act right now, we had one in 1875, and it was struck down by the Supreme Court. It ruled that the 14th Amendment did not give Congress the authority to prevent discrimination committed by private individuals. Now, here's where this shit gets tricky. If a person in a state, any state, a southern state particularly, killed a black person, let's put it like that, killed an African American, killed a former slave, they could not be punished because by the state is the one who allowed them to do it with the black codes. They allowed white people to do what they wanted to do with black people with the black codes. And that was their tool that they used to put you in those predicaments. But the federal government said, we're not going to go into a state and try and regulate an individual for killing a black man. That is the state's responsibility. So when Dred Scott took all this shit from the state to the Supreme Court, which is federal, they kicked that shit out and told him, you ain't never gonna be a citizen. The same with our shit now. They are not going to allow us to be a citizen in this country. Congress said it right there. Victims of racial discrimination were told to seek relief not from the federal government. And at the same time, state governments were passing laws that put your ass in a bigger predicament. They made it worse for you. The 29th paragraph. When a man has emerged from slavery and by the whatever beneficent legislation has shaken off the inseparable concomitant of that state, there must be some stage in the progress of his elevation, in the progress of a slave's elevation, where he takes the rank of a mere citizen and ceases to be that special favor, that's some sarcasm, of the law. And when his rights as a citizen or a man are to be proclaimed or protected in the ordinary mode by which other men's rights are protected. The Constitution does not investigate Congress with power to legislate within the domain of state legislation. The wrongful act of individuals, unsupported by law, is a private wrong and a crime of that individual, not of that state, and it's not something that the federal government is going to stick their nose in. You really want to know what we are? We are Moorish in the early 14th century, inhabitants of Northwest Africa, which is where we are right now. Africa's real name is not Africa. It is Akibulan. That is the name of Africa, but the British could not pronounce it, so they renamed it and called it Africa. But in true reality, it's Al-Kibulan. We were here way before Columbus claimed he discovered it. This is something that you can look up, the land acknowledgement of Akibulan. I'm not going to go through that. But here's where I show you how I'm telling you that we are part of Northwest Africa. Look at North America on this map. Look at where it fits in about Africa. And by the way, none of these other continents surrounding Africa are nearly the size they make them to be. They're 1/3 the size of Africa, of what they are right now. But whoever drew this map made them look really big, like they were significant, but they're not. Africa can put all these continents inside of Africa. They got just that much land space. So don't think maps are telling the damn truth. We all know about the 400 years of oppression. I'm not going to talk about that. We're going to go to the Liberty Bell. If you want to go and see the Liberty Bell, it's located at 101 South Independence Mall in West Philadelphia. But you still got to see Leviticus 25:10 written on the Liberty Bell. And it says, and ye shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land until all the inhabitants of thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession. You hear me? And ye shall return every man unto his family. So this is inscribed on the Liberty Bell. And look it up it's on the internet right now. You can find it, and you can read it in the Bible, Leviticus 25:10. So 50 years, 50th year is after 1863. So 1863, you add 50 years to it, it's 1910, 1912, 1915, somewhere in that area, I don't know, 1913. That's when we were supposed to be reunited with our possessions, our riches, our land, and our money, which is the acreage and the money to go with it. That's what the federal government is supposed to give us. Abolitionists adopted the Freedom Bell as a symbol of freedom for them during the Underground Railroad. All right, the Declaration of Independence, it says something. I'm going to do one line of the Declaration of the Independence. It said that all men are created equal. And if you look at the date, 1776, which is tomorrow, several hundred years from then, we're celebrating this day tomorrow, which is not your damn holiday, black, African American, colored nigga. It's not yours. And I say those words because I don't know who the hell we are. I know who I am right now. I'm an American Moor. You can be an American Moor in a nation within a nation, just like the Navajo, the Chickasha, all those Indians tribes have nations within a nation. So does the Moors. We have a nation within a Moor, within a nation. And just some other information that I've found, that in the 14th century, which is 1300s, the Moors had established themselves in this country, Northwest Africa, America. The Spanish came in and defeated the Moors in battle and took over the land. So basically disappeared the Moors at that time that were here in this country. But they didn't get them all. Some of us are true descendants of the Moors, and many of us have been contaminated, but we've been able to reconnect our bloodline with our bloodline from Africa. All men are created equal. In 1776, we were still slaves. So you already know that didn't apply to us. All these articles in the Constitution, I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go to the Bill of Rights. Congress proposed 12 amendments. And the Bill of Rights is nothing more all the amendments, the 27 amendments that supplemented the U.S. Constitution. That's all it is. There are 4 Emancipation Proclamations. The initial one was Abraham Lincoln. They call that Abraham Lincoln Executive Will. Slaves shall be forever free is written in there, and in any effort for their actual freedom. Now, how many times have you saw a word in front of freedom like that? Actual freedom. So basically you got freedom, but you don't have actual freedom because you have to do something. And Abraham Lincoln tells you you have to do something in order for you to become a free American citizen. Next one was the Compensated Emancipation Proclamation, 1862. 10 million people lived outside the U.S. jurisdiction, probably more. They are called Egypt of the West people. That's what they call them in the proclamation of the Compensation Proclamation. They call these people west of the Appalachian Mountains, Egypt of the West people. That's what they call them. Payment for liberated slaves. This is where the government said the federal government said they were going to pay the slave owners $10 up to $100 for every slave. And just so you know, only 2,900 slaves were paid for were claimed during the time period they opened it up for them to get their money for the slaves. Only 2,900 out of the 10 million, so to speak, slaves. Colonizing of liberated slaves and placed in anywhere you wanted to live. it states in the compensated emancipation that you can live. They would set you up anywhere you want to live in this country. That shit never happened. But remember, they said they were going to pay for the slaves. Then there was a supplemental. I didn't really go into that one. And then there's this oath of amnesty and reconstruction. The oath of amnesty, that's considered the fourth Emancipation Proclamation, by the way. And what they said, the top 10% of military officers take the oath, which was all the Confederate generals and high-ranking individuals had to take that oath. And when they took that oath, they ended up becoming rulers of these states, the 11 southern states: Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. All those states became part of this 10% of military officers. So those officers went right back into power as governors of the state and legislators of the state, and they enacted rules and regulations that made it very difficult for a black person to stay out of jail. They put people right back in jail so they can put them right back on the plantation. And that's exactly what they did. And they're doing that to this day right now. The farm owners can go to the prison and they lease out slaves or they lease out black people to go work on their farm for free. They pay the prison to get the prisoner to come to their farm and work for free again. They don't get compensated for the work that they do. We've never gotten compensated. And if that's all you want reparations, you might as well go and die right now, because you're not going to get reparations. But because you're thinking about reparations, that's money. Reparations is not money. Reparations is giving us our own land, giving us our tax exemption, giving us our 40 acres and a mule. All of that stuff, it becomes ours, and that's our reparations. Otherwise, it's not our taking. All right. Permanent freedom is a temporary arrangement. That is actually stated in the Oath of Amnesty and Reconstruction. You'll see it once we do go deeper into this presentation. Looking at the word slave, we're not slaves, and that's what I want you to realize. We're not slaves. A human being who was property and could be bought and sold or pledged. This came out of the Black's Law Dictionary. You're not a slave. But because they say this is what it is, that doesn't make it you. Because slave is they try to give us the word slave as a nationality. That's us. Anytime we talk about us, that's saying all of y'all are slaves. You cannot make a legislative motion or edict saying that we're slaves without naming who we are exactly, because you cannot call us slaves and give that to us as a title. It is not our title. In the Fifth Amendment, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken. Look, this is what I want you to hear. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Now, you see that in the Fifth Amendment, and you're going to see how it's violated in the 14th Amendment, where they say they're not going to pay for the release of the liberated slaves. So you telling the people in the 14th Amendment that you don't give a damn what the Fifth Amendment say. You're overruling that shit, but you can't unless you rescind it in the Fifth. And you cannot make it in the 14th Amendment until you rescind it in the Fifth Amendment. You cannot do it. So the 14th Amendment is invalid. So you walk around thinking you free because of the 14th Amendment, you got it twisted. All persons held as slaves, here we go again, calling us slaves within any state or destination. It's not us. And don't allow yourself to be pigeonholed or bottlenecked into these bullshit categories and names that are not ours. You're not African American, you're not Negro, you're not colored, you're not none of that stuff. You're not the N-word, you're not that. Don't allow yourself to be called that, and don't succumb to the checking the damn box. Don't let them put you in that box. You can write your nationality down, and your nationality is M-O-O-R, American. Moorish American. That's your nationality, whether you went through the declaration or not. That's what you are. All persons and of the state wherein they reside. The 14th Amendment is valid. It's not right. The oath of amnesty was taken by all the white generals. It only applied to the southern states, so the people in the north were still slaves. These are the states. I already called them out. The Confederate states received no punishment for anything. Northern slave states, they kept their slaves longer than they did in Texas. Taking the oath, these are the people who take the oath. Confederates take the oath. Immigrants take the oath. How do they become citizens? They taking the oath. Military people, why do you think when you're inducted into the military, the first thing you do is become a citizen? And how do you become a citizen? Is by taking the oath. Now, the ones that don't become citizens are the ones who signed an agreement to fight and serve the military for so many years, and at the end of your tour, then you can become a citizen. Other nations cannot become U.S. citizens without taking the oath. Right now, we live under what you call granted privileges, brothers, sisters. We're living under granted privileges. We are not recognized by any government. You can't go to Germany and they ask you, well, what's your nationality? What's an African American? What is that? You know, South American white folks can say they're African American. You know, anybody can say they're African American, and you can't do it. You can't say it that way. We're a specific class of people, and nobody else is part of us. And once we get that through our head, we'll become a much smarter individual because we believe in ourselves instead of believing in that indoctrination that they gave you. Your oath makes you a citizen. And if you don't take the oath, you don't have a nation in this country. Also in the Gettysburg Address, that all men are created equal. Look at the date, November 19, 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation was issued what? January 1, 1863. So this one should have applied to you as a freed slave or freed individual, person of bondage, because you were a prisoner. This should apply to you, but the Gettysburg Address don't apply to you. This is the purpose. 27 amendments of the Constitution. Relevant amendments, the first, the second, the fourth, and the fifth. In other words, I told you about the fifth, that nobody will get paid, that we will pay our debts as a country. There are two 13th Amendment, which was both ratified by the federal government and the states. The 13th Amendment with two sections was ratified January 31st, 1865, very important date. And that amendment applied only to Washington, D.C. And this is the problem. Section 1 of the 13th Amendment, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime. That except as a punishment for crime is what made us prisoners right now. That is the slave line. That is the capture line, the hint to tell you to go get black people and put them back in jail, and put them back on farm. That line in the U.S. Constitution gave white men the right to lock your ass up. And that's what they did. The 14th Amendment are therefore are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are subjected to the jurisdiction and are citizens, but you're not true citizens. Here's the part that contradicts the Fifth Amendment, or any claim for the loss of emancipation of any slave, but all such debt, obligation, and claims shall, you're not paying for the slave release. So if you saying everything, if somebody try to claim against you, you're gonna help hold them illegal and void. You're not gonna pay them. So we never got paid for. The federal government enticed the plantation owners to release us and promise a pay, and when they claimed, they never got paid. So technically, we were never free. We'll go into authenticating the birth certificate, social security card at a later date. So this is basically what we're going to cover when we go when we do the snakes. We're going to do the front and the back of the social security card and the front and the back of the birth certificate. Also, the documents that give you authentication. When you authenticate yourself from the state, on the state level, this is the document you receive, and you authenticate yourself on the federal level, this is the document you receive. Which authentication is nothing more than telling the federal and the state government that, hey, I do not want you to represent me anymore. You're no longer my representative. I represent myself. Now, this is something I'm gonna mention, but I'm not gonna go into it. This is how you become the straw man. You have a straw man. You get rid of your straw man. That's what you're doing with this document. The Fifth Amendment, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken. We were property at the time, and that's the truth. But it was taken from public use without just compensation. We never compensated the slaveholders. This is the 14th, and I'm not going to go into it. This is how you got caught up with the black codes, Jim Crow laws, ancestry, and birthrights, which is what you're missing right now. The federal government is still failing to protect the rights of black citizens, and I'm calling us black, but we know we're not black. The Amnesty Act of 1872, it nullified Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and granted full citizenship rights to over 200,000 Confederates, not blacks, Confederates. The act returned the South to white supremacy and took away the rights of black people. This is the Black News Network. My name is Warren Smith Bay, and I'm here to tell you that you're not a citizen, and that you should seek who you really are, and that your main objective in life should be to reconnect with your ancestors before you die. Because if you don't, you're gonna die. You're gonna be like in an unmarked grave because you don't have your identity corrected. Correct your identity, my friend. Please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and become a member of the Black News Network. You can find us our webpage at BNN247.org. You can like us on Facebook at BNN247. You can like us on YouTube at BNN.247. Do it, y'all. It don't cost you nothing. And I really do appreciate it. With that, This is Walt Smith bringing you the real voice of Black USA. Peace.